Africa Must Fragment, South Africa First, by Grant Arthur Gotchen. History has already delivered its verdict. Large, coerced multi-ethnic states inevitably fail, while smaller sovereign nations endure and prosper. Yugoslavia's collapse stemmed from centralized power that suppressed national self-rule, enforcing coercion among its peoples. Its dissolution ended that forced unity. Violence was concentrated in areas where borders remained disputed, such as Bosnia and Kosovo, while consolidated secessions, like those of Slovenia and, later, Croatia, quickly stabilized. Once new borders stabilized overall, violence sharply declined. Fragmentation itself did not fail. The true failure lay in prolonging an incomplete and unsustainable union through delay and refusal to accept separation. Africa endures the same structural flaw, amplified by borders arbitrarily drawn during the 1884 to 1885 Berlin Conference to suit imperial convenience. Those lines disregarded language, culture, and historical ties, then solidified into post-colonial states designed primarily for resource extraction. The consequences, genocide and civil war, have erupted within these recognized states, not between potential successors. Rwanda exemplifies genocide without secessionist partition. Sudan civil war culminating in separation. Nigeria chronic internal conflict without partition. Congo permanent internal extraction and violence. Forced unity breeds death. Separation contains it. By contrast, smaller, more cohesive states like Botswana have achieved stability and prosperity precisely because scale and ethnic alignment enable effective, accountable rule. The African Union, AU, perpetuates a profound hypocrisy by clinging to the 1964 Cairo Declaration and the supposed sanctity of colonial borders to stifle internal demands for sovereignty, even as it vigorously champions Palestinian statehood. This inconsistency represents a fundamental legal fracture. By endorsing self-determination for others while treating Africa as a prison house of nations, the AU has undermined its own moral authority on questions of territorial integrity. Remedial secession and the limits of uti possidetis juris. Fragmentation aligns with orthodox international law through the doctrine of remedial secession, recognized when a people face systematic oppression, denial of self-determination, or existential threats within a state, specifically persistent denial of internal self-determination plus material harm, as mirrored in Canadian Supreme Court and ICJ reasoning, and the qualified application of uti possidetis juris, which preserves colonial borders but yields to binding self-determination rights when unity becomes coercive and unsustainable. Territorial integrity protects states that genuinely serve their peoples. It does not entitle regimes to imprison distinct communities. Self-determination is binding international law. Self-determination is not mere activist rhetoric. It is enforceable law. The UN Charter, Article 1, 2, the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights and International Covenant on Economic, Social and Cultural Rights, Article 1, the African Charter on Human and People's Rights, and South Africa's own Constitution, Section 235, all affirm the right of peoples to freely determine their political status. These instruments impose a positive legal obligation on states to enable meaningful self-determination. Where internal self-determination is persistently denied, international law does not merely permit external self-determination, it anticipates it. Palestine ends the argument. The international community has already dismantled its own selective objections. As of late 2025, approximately 157 UN member states now recognize the state of Palestine, including major Western powers such as the United Kingdom, Canada, Australia, and France, alongside long-standing recognizers like Spain, Ireland, and Norway. This wave of recognition proceeded regardless of unresolved borders, fragmented governance, or institutional shortcomings, establishing that diplomatic recognition follows asserted peoplehood and political consent, not administrative competence. The standard applied was political consent, not state performance. That precedent eliminates any claim to inconsistent standards. If such prerequisites are not required for Palestine, they cannot justly be demanded of African peoples seeking lawful self-determination. Communities like Biafra, Ambazonia, Azawad, Darfur, and Katanga qualify under the same logic. These groups seek consent-based governance. The disorder and violence arise not from their aspirations, but from their continued suppression. Israel and the logic of survival. Israel's existence demonstrates the necessity of partition when unified governance proves impossible. A single-state mandate descended into civil war, leading to partition, which delivered sovereignty, secure borders, and long-term survival. Peoples facing existential threats cannot endure within hostile or predatory majorities. Africa's challenge manifests more as extraction than outright annihilation, but the underlying principle remains identical. True survival requires sovereignty. Refusing Africans a mechanism accepted for the Jewish people imposes hierarchy, not impartial law. The logic of Zionism, survival through sovereign control and self-defense, offers the only realistic path for South Africa's distinct communities. Just as the Jewish people concluded that security was impossible without physical borders and independent defense, the Zulu, Xhosa, and residents of the Western Cape must recognize that their safety and prosperity cannot be assured under an extractive central authority. Sovereignty is not a luxury. It is an imperative for survival. South Africa, Fragment first. South Africa presents the most urgent and compelling case. Under the African National Congress, ANC, the country has collapsed into one of the world's worst examples of governance. Or rather, not governance at all, but systematic extractive plunder designed to enrich the party's leadership. Every component of government is effectively for sale, including and especially foreign policy, which has been aligned with Iran through deepening military ties, such as participation in joint BRICS naval exercises involving Iranian vessels and high-level defense visits. The ANC has stolen and sold whatever it could from the nation. Even the superficial facade presented during South Africa's G20 presidency was pure deception, an elaborate, rushed effort involving temporary cleanups and makeovers that quickly faded, concealing the persistent neglect and deterioration of Johannesburg's city center, where hijacked buildings, uncollected waste, and infrastructure collapse continued unabated. For an example, see this video. Corruption is not incidental, but systemic. Accountability is virtually non-existent. Resources flow inward to the center. Decay and deprivation radiate outward. The state is not failing in its intended purpose. It is succeeding spectacularly as a wealth extraction machine to benefit the ANC, focused on asset stripping the nation and plundering the public purse. The nation's debt reveals the depth of this failure. As of late 2025, CSE/SERB data, central government gross debt stands at approximately 78.9% of GDP. When including municipal arrears, contingent liabilities, government guarantees to SOEs totaling over our $700 billion, with Eskom alone utilizing over our $350 billion and Transnet drawing heavily, and the massive obligations of state-owned enterprises, particularly Eskom and Transnet, the effective burden pushes the country toward outright insolvency. Interest payments increasingly crowd out essential services. Economic growth has stalled. Capital is fleeing. This is not mere mismanagement. It is the inevitable outcome of enforced unity on an unsustainable scale. South Africa is now unsustainable in its current form. To avert widespread violence, a peaceful breakup represents the only viable solution. South Africa must lead the way in fragmentation. Voluntary, referendum-based independence for historical ethno-cultural homelands, such as those of the Zulu, Xhosa, Tswana, Sotho, Venda, and Sangha, along with the Western Cape, would replace coercion with genuine consent. A March 2025 poll by Victory Research, commissioned by the Cape Independence Advocacy Group, showed 51% support for a referendum and 43% for independence outright in the Western Cape, underscoring the mounting urgency of consensual separation. This is not regression to tribalism. It is the foundation of legitimate governance. The chaos claim fails. The frequent assertion that fragmentation would unleash chaos is refuted by history. Every major African conflict of the past half-century has occurred within existing borders. Yugoslavia's wars ceased once new borders stabilized. Eritrea's secession, once accepted, did not trigger endless violence. Subsequent tensions arose from Ethiopia's refusal to implement the Boundary Commission's ruling, not the separation itself. Violence follows coercion. Enforced unity accelerates it. Spain's recognition of Palestine highlights a broader inevitability. Nations that endorse self-determination abroad while denying it at home invite the same principles to be applied internally. This precedent jurisprudentially enables and structurally advances independence claims for regions like Catalonia and the Basque Country, no matter how long it takes, by Spain's own act, not by separatist pressure. It will jurisprudentially enable extensions to regions seeking independence worldwide, including within South Africa, reinforcing the case for consensual separation. A disciplined path to fragmentation. Fragmentation demands rigorous discipline to succeed peacefully and sustainably. It should proceed through legally grounded referenda conducted under international observation to ensure fairness and legitimacy. Transitional fiscal agreements must allocate existing debt equitably and establish currency stability during the separation process. Finally, mutual recognition treaties among new entities would guard against future revanchism or territorial disputes. Conclusion. Berlin's borders served empire. Post-colonial elites preserved them for personal extraction. The toll is evident in mass graves and depleted treasuries. Europe has partially corrected its mistakes abroad while preserving them at home. Spain's recognition of Palestine stands in direct tension with its continued denial of Catalan and Basque self-determination, a contradiction that cannot survive sustained application of the same legal principle. The world has legitimized Palestine. Israel demonstrates why sovereignty is essential for survival. The graves of Rwanda and the empty coffers of South Africa stand as final witnesses. Africa can wait no longer. It must follow suit, starting with South Africa. Refusal to permit lawful secession converts territorial integrity into collective punishment. Grant Arthur Gotchen, Emeritus Special Envoy for Diaspora Affairs, African Union. Honorary Consul for the Republic of Togo. Grant Arthur Gotchen writes on African sovereignty, self-determination, and post-colonial state failure. He advises traditional leaders and communities seeking lawful pathways to independence and international recognition. Traditional leaders and communities seeking assistance in presenting their case for self-determination to the United States government are invited to contact him directly. He is easily found online and offers pro bono diplomatic support. Footnotes/sources. United Nations Charter, Article 1, 2. https://www.un.org/and/about-us/on-charter. International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights. Article 1 https://www.ok.org/in/instruments-mechanisms/international-covenant-civil-and-political-rights. African Charter on Human and People's Rights https://au.in/and/treaties/African-Charter-Human-and-People's-Rights. Constitution of the Republic of South Africa, Section 235 https://www.justice.gov.za/legislation/constitution/essay-constitution-web-ung.pdf. UN List of States Recognizing Palestine https://www.un.org/unispal/document-topic/status-of-Palestine. OAU 1964 Cairo Declaration on Border Disputes https://au.in/and/decisions/Cairo-Declaration-1964. South African National Treasury Budget Review and Debt Statistics https://www.treasury.gov.za. Supreme Court of Canada, Reference Re-Secession of Quebec https://scc-csc-scc-csc/scc-csc/in/item/1643/index.do.